Hello, I'm Julie Swenson, Managing Director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin. And this is Theater Forward, a twice monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insight into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 53 of Theater Forward. This week's conversation is with Carrie Hitchcock and Josh Krause, two of the 6 actors who just completed rehearsing in person and filming Forward Theater's production of Lewiston, Clarkston. Welcome, Carrie and Josh. How are you?
Thank you.
Doing well, Julie. Thank you.
Hey, so we did, on top of everything, on top of our whole safety plan and rehearsing in person and testing 3 times a week, we actually did 2 shows at once. We had separate casts, 2 stage managers, an assistant stage manager that ran back and forth. Carrie, can you tell us a little bit about Lewiston?
Oh, sure. Lewiston involves 3 people. There's a lady in her 70s, a gentleman in his 50s, and a young, let me say, she's a mystery guest in her 20s. So Lewiston involves, it's about family, it's about legacy, it is about conflict between generations, between attitudes, and also involves just a lot of change, I would say, just change in the environment, change physically, emotionally, all those things. And there are a lot of surprises. I don't want to say anything that might be a spoiler, so I'll just leave you with that.
Sounds great. And Josh, you were in Clarkston. What do you say about that show?
Clarkston, a lot like Lewiston, is a play about, it's 3 people, 2 young men, 20-somethings, a woman in her 30-somethings. It is a play about, I love that word, Carrie, legacy. It's about a journey and not necessarily a destination, and discovering being okay with not knowing where you're going to end up.
Beautiful. Yes.
And I also add, we should probably say Lewiston is in Idaho and Clarkston is in Washington. So they're just 2 little places. I mean, they talk about the Costco a lot, and the Costco's actually in Clarkston. So that's where everybody goes. So, yeah.
Yeah, real places, real people. Yeah, beautiful. Was this the first time the 2 of you have been in person rehearsing for a while? Did you do anything? You didn't do anything in 2020. Josh, we saw you last in like March 13th of 2020, but we had to say goodbye. We will not finish amateurs.
Right.
It was that the last time you were on stage?
Yeah, it's been a full year for me.
Right. And Carrie?
Yeah, really. The last time I was on stage would have been summer of 2019. So I was ahead of the game with all this. Of course, I was lucky enough to do a couple things, Zoom reading, some of those very clever things that all came to be. So thank God for that. Some of those interesting techno fusion, whatever they were, but good to see other people.
Yeah. How did it feel to be back on stage rehearsing in person?
The safety plan in place did not change the vibe of our rehearsal space. I'll speak for Clarkston because I wasn't. Lewiston was the floor above us, so I know for
You couldn't be in that room.
no, can't be in
We
that
were
room.
dancing
Right.
on your heads the
I know, I
entire
felt it.
time, my darling.
Yeah, I felt it. Yeah, apart from some lovely messages left in the elevator that each cast would share, we never got to interact with Lewiston. Lewiston never got to interact with Clarkston, and but being back in the rehearsal room, even with our safety precautions and protocols in place, it was rehearsal. It was doing the work, 6 feet apart, masks on, and putting but our hearts and our souls were still in the room. We couldn't see each other's faces until it was time to film, but we were giving it our all, and we were all taking care of each other, and a few extra hoops to hop through, but it was creating theater again in person.
So
Yeah, it
wonderful.
was really quite amazing, that whole journey of just moving together. The trust and the kindness that enveloped us from everyone. I also, thank goodness for our safety person, Celia Clare, who was kind of a connecting rod, as well as Laura Gray, who is a member of the cast of Clarkston, but she was our voice for Lewiston. So to have that connection between the two pieces was as sad as I was, because I've told Josh this, I was very excited to have the chance to quote unquote work with him. And I saw him once in the parking structure, which was very exciting, but that was it.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it really was rehearsal. I will say, it was a bit like riding the bike with the kickstand on for a bit. And then once okay, you're wearing a mask, that's fine. Sometimes I don't hear you as clearly as I might, but the connection gets there. You kind of adapt rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was joyous. Let me add that too.
That's so great. Well, we were fortunate enough to be approved by Actors Equity, and we had this very rigorous safety plan. And before we get into that, your comment, Carrie, made me think of the safety plan was designed prior to rehearsal. We had to obviously get it approved before we could get you in the room. So there were many things anticipated that then we found, oh, maybe we can ask to change this. One of them was the mask, recognizing that if actors have gone 2 to 3 weeks with their scene partner, never seeing their nose and mouth, that seeing their full face for the first time during filming is a bad idea. so we had to ask. Unfortunately, they said yes, during runs you could have your mask off. But how was that? Once the mask got ripped off, was there a change?
Oh yes, I truly became a little fascinated with people's noses. It was like, really? Well, what does my nose look like?
Right.
Yeah.
What if somebody's doing something wild with their mouth and have been doing that the entire rehearsal process? Now you just found out. Josh, what do you think?
It became a lot easier just to stay in the scene, stay in the world that we had created, and because there was so much more information coming my way that I was able to see someone's mouth and see the whole, see what the whole self was being. Hang on, I was able to take in so much more information, and then I was able to just react with far greater opinion, greater purpose in the moment, because I could know without question what the other person was thinking, feeling, or doing. And it just became so much more fun. I had so much more, there's so much less guesswork.
I mean, if the job of an actor is to react, to react with just eyes is a small percentage of the available reaction.
Yeah, but I will say throughout all of the rehearsal process with masks on, with 6 feet of distance, making sure that props were being handled and exchanged carefully, all those added layers of conflict, I it helped me deepen my work, finding what Chris really, really needed. Um, it had to be I had to be so specific there in my initial work, so that when it came to being in the room with these new added layers that weren't going to be there when we're ready to film, if I didn't have something brewing already in my heart, in my stomach, in my in my eyes, like I needed to have something already or I was going to be in big trouble.
Mhm.
That's great. Yes, of course, of course. So we mentioned our wonderful COVID compliance officer, Celia Claire. Celia Claire not only was the first person that you saw at the command center, but a week prior, Celia and I went out to southern Wisconsin delivering 3 tests before you even got to in-person rehearsals. But I know people would love to hear you talk about the process, like what really did the day-to-day safety plan look like? So beginning, you all had to go into the command center. For people that don't know, is the
Mhm.
Henry Street entrance of the Overture Center for the Arts. One at a time. Take us through. What was the day?
Well, walking in, you always had to calculate, make sure you had enough time to get from the parking structure to the command center, where we would all enter one at a time. So you had to make sure you had enough time there. I also have to add, when we started rehearsals, the command center was all boarded up. And so one glorious day, we had windows and and we could see Celia, and it was no longer like going into a construction site. So that was very exciting. But once you got in, you of course had your temperature checked. If it was a spit day, you handed in your sample, which I should talk just a little bit. Having only had a PCR test, with the nasal swab, the whole spit thing was a whole new world for me, spitting into my little container. So so we handed
My
that in.
understanding is it takes a couple spits to fill up that container.
Why, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
All right.
And there's always the chance, is that enough spit? Probably yes. Probably more than enough spit. But so handing that off to Celia, answering our questions, how we were feeling, making sure we deposited the pen in the dirty bin rather than the clean bin, selecting our mask and water for the day, and then parading up, following the blue arrows to our own little world. So I think that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So then,
Yeah, we
Josh, what happens? You're in the rehearsal room,
get
and
into
then
the
what?
get into
What?
the rehearsal room and in in times before COVID and in times, well, I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to look like after COVID, so I won't say that. But certainly before COVID, getting into a rehearsal room, it's all shared. Everything is shared. The table is shared. The pens are shared. You're going to sit directly next to your cohorts, and you're going to talk about your day and how was the drive, and oh, what did you bring for a snack? Let's swap things like that.
Maybe
And
go to the coffee station,
absolutely,
grab a cup of coffee.
grab a cup of coffee on the way in because you
Right.
haven't had enough. You're not ready for the day yet. We come into the command center. We can't stop anywhere else. We're in our tight little bubbles. Coming home is just that. Groceries are delivered. Anything extra, Target has to be curbside. So that when we can come into the rehearsal space, we know that we are confident we are just bringing ourselves and not anybody else with us. No one else's germs, no one else's air, just bring us. So we get to the rehearsal space. We each have our own little corners of the room to go to. We have a little table, a chair, and then that becomes our corner of the room. So to share with each other how the day is going, it's across a room and creating that camaraderie. You have distance, but it's still a rehearsal space. When it comes time to leaving the room, there it's all one ways, just like Madison. There's the one way out. um, we each have separate stalls with our names written on, like on a piece of paper, to show this is where you use the bathroom. This is this is your sink, and it's just it's very careful, and it just kept all of us feeling really confident that we could come into work every day knowing that this is going to be my little space, that I can throw all of my stuff on this table. I will clean the table afterwards, but I can just spread out a little bit over here and know that I'm keeping everyone else safe. And then we just get to work.
And we were lucky enough, the whole bathroom situation, for instance, how fortunate we are to be a tenant at the Overture Center for the Arts. Not only did they have the correct amount of air exchange per hour in each of these rooms, but also that there is capacity for each person to have their own stall and their own sink. And that is not true of a lot of companies and other theater homes. So that was great. On break, then, what happens? So, we have to do the equity, 80 minutes or 110. What happens during that time?
Well, with a longer break like that, there would be time if you wanted to go back to your place. But most of us, I think, stayed in, especially once we got into tech. And that takes us all the way to our dressing rooms, which were only used by us. I mean, so that was very, very different. The idea that no one could come in and bring anything into you. So we were these self-sufficient little whatever we were thing, bringing everything in and then depositing it out. I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to give a nod to the thing about the safety plan is how many people have to be involved in it. And I wanted to give a nod to my family for also being part of that bubble. All these people who had to adjust their behaviors in order to make this happen. And just who was allowed in the bubble. I mean, a nod to Forward for being so strict with, okay, I'm sorry, we won't see you. I think, Julie, you were designated as a runner,
the first time in my career, I was not in tech. And that I kept getting, beautiful texts from the stage manager. We're missing you today. But I was out of the bubble and had to be the runner. So when, somebody needed Benadryl, I was the one that was able to get to Walgreens and get the Benadryl. But then I delivered the food, but then as soon as you all came by to get the food, I kind of ran out my car, waved and things. And that was hard. I'm looking forward to being able to see you all again. But yeah, that's part of the safety plan. Somebody had to be the person that, could go into stores when none of you could.
Right. With that safety plan, again, a nod to you and how well prepared, because there are unexpected circumstances that pop up. Julia mentioned the Benadryl. So yeah, I did have a little skin reaction and had to have some time away. But because of that wonderful plan, there was an understudy who was able to do some walkthrough so that work could continue. And perhaps Josh would like to talk about. Didn't you have a little time away?
I did. Yeah, I did. I got my second vaccination shot. Oh my gosh, the days flew by so quickly. It was the Wednesday before tech. So we only had a few more days left in our room. And we're down to that time where you can feel the clock starting to tick a little faster. And I got my second shot the Tuesday. and was all like, I remember my elevator ride down after rehearsal on Tuesday. I said to myself, Josh, you're coming into work tomorrow. You're going to be just fine. I built a wall around myself, anti-sick wall. It's like, I'm doing it. I'm coming back in. But luckily, Celia gave me a call the next morning. It's like, hey, Josh, you're going to stay in. And she just convinced me, like, it's not worth it. We have plenty more to do. We have plenty of time. And she told me that it was going to be, she called it. She's like, I bet in 1 hour, you're going to be passed out in your bed. And I was, and I slept for a good while. And now I'm fully vaccinated. It's been, and we didn't really lose any time or space. So I thank Celia very, very much that she just said, stay home. It's not worth it.
Yeah. At that point, she had a couple people who tried to come in, not cast, but others, after their second shot, and were running a fever, because that's what happened. And she had to send them home anyway. And if you're traveling, from Milwaukee, it's too far to come. So
yeah.
Great. Well, we got through it, gang.
We did.
Oh, yay.
What? Through all of this. And thank you. I mean, Carrie, you thanked Forward, but it would never have happened without the enthusiastic participation and compliance of everybody and everyone's family. And this desire to stay healthy and safe to get this done. And it all worked. We had no real issues, and we have a beautiful, beautiful 2 plays. So thank you so much for joining me. It's so great to see you. And someday soon, I will see you and hug you.
Yes.
And we'll do a show without mask in person. Okay.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
That's all for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about theater in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you for joining us. I'm Julie Swenson. Our podcast is produced by Scott Hayden, and you can follow us or share your thoughts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Theater Forward, as always with an ER. And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might tune in. We are grateful to have you listening, and we'll be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.